Okay. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Let's have the sincere intention, lillahi ta'ala. Okay. Today we'll finish up the chapter of contracts, and we're talking about the obligation of spouses, both woman and husband, wife and husband, and also on the children if the parents are poor. Okay, so the teacher said, or the author said, it's an obligation upon the solvent person, the one that has more than his basic needs, to support his poor ancestors. Which means if any of his ancestors do not have anything to meet their basic needs, then he is obligated to support them. What's meant by ancestors are both from the mother's side and the father's side. So if both his father and his mother are poor, he needs to support them. Again, if this person is solvent. And here ancestors obviously means just the elders that are alive. So if one has a grandfather or a grandmother that are poor, this grandfather does not have children, they all died, the grandchild has to support the grandfather if the grandchild is solvent. Solvent means, yeah, the one that has more than his basic needs. Likewise, if he has a great-great-grandfather that is poor, and this person is solvent, and there is no one among the relatives of this ancestor are alive, then that is an obligation to support him. Right? He has to do that. So the solvent child has to work, has to support his poor parents, whether the parent is able to work, so he can find work and finds a suitable job or not. So which means if the father, for example, is able to work, he can find a suitable job with a good salary, but he does not do it, like he is poor, then the solvent son is obligated to support his father. So he does not tell his father, you can work, go and find yourself a job. I will not support you. He has to support him. The parent has to support his child if they are poor. So they do not have enough belongings to meet their basic needs, and they cannot work to sustain themselves, whether because they are little children, because they are insane, or because they are unable to work out of sickness, like a sickness that remains always. Like it will always be like that, so a chronic condition, a lifelong condition. This is when the father supports them. Now, if the child is pubescent, so he can work, he has physical ability to work and acquire his basic needs, but he is poor for one reason or another. He is not sick in a permanent way that prevents him from acquiring his basic needs. He is not insane, but he is poor and pubescent. In this case, the parent is not obligated to support the child. In other terms, it is not a personal obligation upon the parent to support the child in relation to this judgment. And in the one before it, there is no difference if the child is a male or female. So if there is a poor father and he has 3 children, a male and 2 females, and 3 of them are solvent, then the 3 of them, they share supporting their father. Likewise, if it's their mother, then it's mother. So it's an obligation upon the 3 of them in equal amounts. Another example is if a female becomes pubescent and she is physically able to work, but she is poor, then it is not a personal obligation upon her father to support her anymore. If the child is not pubescent, but by one way or another, the child has some money, so the father is poor, the child has extra money, then the father is entitled to take from his child's money enough to support himself for the basic needs. Now the support that we were talking about refers to stable food like bread and the food that is eaten with it usually. So you cook something and then you eat bread with it. Also, the support include clothes and shelter. So it's not an obligation upon the child to provide his parents with a fancy house. He provides them with what is suitable for them. The same thing applies for food and clothing. when we talk about the amount of food in this context, we're talking about the food that makes one full, not what is on top of that. So if the child neglects supporting his poor parents, or the parents neglect supporting his poor child, when the support is obligated upon him, one is sensible by doing that. So additional type of like obligatory support on the child onto the poor father is to cover the expenses of him getting married if the father's wife dies and the father needs to get married. So if the father dies, if the father, his wife dies, and he needs to arrange, he needs to get married because he fears he will commit sins. If he does not get married, in this case, the father is poor and the child is solvent, the child has to support his father with that. So some people, if their father wants to get married after the death of their mother or his wife, they prevent him from doing that. They make him sad and act in a way that harms the father. Many people, they do that because of inheritance. They don't want to add more people into the picture. And they are not allowed to do that. Rather, they need to help him. Hmm. So it's an obligation upon the husband to support his wife that makes herself available to him. So if the wife did not leave his house without his permission, so sometimes the wife leaves the house and she goes off for a certain time, few days, few months. Also, if she makes herself self available for him, which means she does not prevent him from having sexual intercourse with her without an excuse, then the husband has to support his wife, even if she is sick or a non-Muslim wife. So the husband, every day he has to give her 2 mud, the most common staple crop food. So for this area, it would be like wheat. So he has to do that every day. Every day, by the appearance of dawn, she has this right on him. And he needs to prepare this wheat by baking it. He does not give her the wheat and he tell her, you manage how to make the bread. He makes the bread. If he is poor, he has to give her 1 mud every day. If he's in between, like he's not rich and he's not poor, then 1.5 mud every day. Now with the sweet, he needs to give her what is eaten usually with the bread. So the things that are eaten by the people of his status. So this differs from one country to another and from one season to another. If they disagree about the quantity of food, that is the food which is eaten with the bread, then the judge rules about that. He has to give her 1 set of clothes for the season, and he needs to provide 1 set of clothes for that is enough to cover her aura and to protect her from either the heat or the cold. So 1 set for the summer, and when the winter comes, another set. Then, when the summer comes, 1 set, and winter comes, it's another set, and so on. So also he needs to provide her what she clean herself with, like soap and the like. And again, this varies from one country to another, from one area to another. He also needs to provide her with something that she sleeps on, and a pillow, and socks if needed. A mat that would be put on the ground to protect her from the harm of the heat and the harm of the cold. Also something that she covers herself with when sleeping, a blanket. If there is a need for that cover for the summer, um, it, he has to provide that if it differs from the cover needed in the winter. And sometimes the same cover might be suitable for 2 seasons. So he needs to get her what she needs to clean her clothes, also a shelter suitable for her, and it's not an obligation to give her more than what the religion made an obligation upon him. Here, so I know about the food. It's good manners to give. The guy gives the woman food that he usually eats. Like he wouldn't give her bread and eggs, for example, while he eats sushi. He would again give her food of his status. So, and this is just like the basic rules. So these rules can If two people agree on something else, and they agree on something other than what was mentioned, then it's okay, it's not a problem. It's just the two need to come to an agreement. Okay, so when we talk about a poor person, we're talking about someone who is considered according to the rules of the religion poor. So not like some people who have a house, they have a car, even if it's not fancy. They have a TV, they have a washing machine, a fridge, 5 to 10 sets of clothing, and then they consider themselves to be poor. This is not what we talk about. Poor means that he cannot afford a suitable shelter, or he cannot afford something to wear to cover his aura, to protect himself from the heat or the cold. And he doesn't find food in a way that he feels full. Like he can't afford food to eat. This is what we mean we're talking about poor. Or someone who is in need to get married and he is unable to get married, meaning like he does not have enough money to get married. This is what we are talking about. Some people, they have a car and you say you don't have enough to eat, then you go and you sell your car and eat. You have 3 sets of clothing for the summer, go and sell one set and eat. Like they can find ways to eat. You're not considered poor because of that religiously talking. So here, yeah. So if someone marries a woman, someone marries more than one woman, he needs to treat them in an equal way in what pertains to the obligatory support and staying the night. So, for example, he does not support one of them, the obligatory support, and neglect the other one. Now, if he supports both of them, the obligatory support, and gives one of them something more, this is okay. Also, if he spends one night with one wife and he needs to spend a night with the other one, or he can spend 2 nights with one wife and he needs to spend 2 nights with the other one. Some people do not treat their wife in an equal way, what pertains to Islamic law. Sometimes a man, after he marries another one, he neglects the first one. So, for example, he does not support her, spend the night with her, he does not feed her, and he is sinful for that. Now, if one of the two wives tell him, hey, it's okay with me if you don't spend the night with me, I don't mind, then he would not be sinful if he does not do that. Or if the wife tells the husband, you don't have to spend on me, I relieve you from this obligation, then it would not be an obligation upon him to support her. But in these two matters, she can say, I now want you to support me, or I now want you to spend the night with me in equal ways, obviously, right? So she can take back her statements. So when we say he has to spend the night, it does not mean that he has to spend Maghrib to Fajr with her. If he spends part of the night with her and the masjid the other part of the night, then this is permissible. If he has two wives, he stays in the house of one during the day, and he does not enter the house of the other one except for a need. And during the night, it's tighter. He is not entitled to enter the house except for a necessity, and it is more strict during the night. During the day, he can enter to see his children, the other wife, during the night, only for a necessity. So it is not a condition to have the same amount of love for both wives because the feelings in the heart are not something that you can control. Yes, you can treat them in an equal way, but when it comes to who he loves, he cannot control that. The Prophet ﷺ, he used to treat his wives equally, and he used to say, which means, Allah, I'm treating my wives equally in this way because this is something that I cannot control. Um, okay. Okay, so he says, Oh Allah, I'm treating my wives in this way because this is something that I cannot control. So do not hold me responsible for what you control and I do not, which means his heart. So he treats the woman equally, but in terms of who he loves more, that's something that he cannot control. So the Prophet ﷺ told us to treat the wife in a good way. He said, which means treat your wives in a good way, like in a good way. So they are like prisoners with you. And this hadith is narrated by Tirmidhi and others. He also said, treat your wives in a good way. And it implies to be patient with them because they were created from a curved rib, which means um, Hawa was created from that, which implies that even if they don't act as they should, be patient with them and treat them in a good way. Do not hurt them and do not fall short in fulfilling their rights. And the one who treats his wife or his wives the best, he'll be the best among the believers, i.e., that this is a good, like this is a sign that he is the best among the believers. The Prophet ﷺ said, the best of you, the best among you, is the one who treats his wife or wives the best. And I am among you the one who treats his wives the best. So he said about himself, and this hadith is narrated by Al-Bukhari. And the Prophet ﷺ, he used to treat his wives better than any other husband. So when he used to come out of the house, he would go to his wives and say Assalamu alaikum. He didn't go inside, but he would send his salams. He would stand at the door and say Assalamu alaikum ahlil bayti wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, which means Assalamu alaikum, O you who are the inhabitants of this place. May Allah have mercy on you and Allah bless you. So the Prophet ﷺ taught us to be humble with our wife or wives and not to go with a bad inclinations. So we, I get talking about the males, act in an arrogant way, and this is a bad inclination. The Prophet, if the husband takes care of the issues of the house and he helps his wife, this is better than waiting for her to do that. He gets reward for that. That is not, and this is not a bad thing to do, right? With the proper intention. The Prophet ﷺ used to milk the sheep that he owned with his hands. He wouldn't tell one of his wives to do it. He would do it himself. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He used to take care of the house himself and he used to patch his clothes himself. And he used to repair his shoes himself. And he used to bring water from the drinking well. And he used to clean the house also. But it was not narrated, so we don't know precisely about this issue. If one has two wives and he does not treat them equally, as we explained, on the day of judgment, half of his side would be paralyzed. He would be unable to move it. If the woman has to give birth, the salary of the midwife, it is upon the husband, so is it upon the husband or the wife to pay it? The Maliki scholars said that the husband has to pay it. The Shafi'i did not talk about this issue, but the male is mentioned that they say that the husband has to pay it. In the Shafi'i school, the wife does not have to make the bread, make the dough, to make the food for the family. She does not have to clean the house. She does not have to clean the furniture. She is not obligated to do any of that. In the medical school, she has to do that. It's on her, except if she is among a family that the female of her family don't usually do that. So they have a social status that they don't live in this way. This is not what they do. They have details about this issue and we will not go further about it. But like if the habit of her family is that they have servants and she is served, if she asks for one and the husband is able to provide that, he has to do it. So it's an obligation upon him to do it. So this is among the obligatory support that he has to afford. If this is her habit in her family and her parents' house. And if he is able to do that, and if she asks for it. A servant can mean someone who works like for a salary, and it means someone bought for like a slave or like a slave. If someone has a wife, then he wants to spend 1 or 2 nights outside the house there. Um, like there is not a problem. Right, there's no problem with that. So he can spend the night out. And he does not have to take the permission. It's good to treat her in a way, it's good to ask, but it's not an obligation. Again, but it's good to tell her I'm going out for a couple of days, I'm busy, I'm doing this, for example, but it's not an obligation to take her permission. So many people that are used to other standards concerning the relations between the husband and the wife. So they need to look at the relationship as a relationship of cooperation from both sides. Cooperation does not mean that I put a target and I'm going towards it regardless of the people who are with me. No, we put together a common target and we agree how to reach it. And this is much easier for everyone. If someone wants to do good deeds, it does not mean to hold him back or to hold her back, and it does not mean to be stubborn. Also, it needs a cooperation and understanding, respect for each other to help each other out. So it's not that you need to help me always and I do not help you. Each one to help the other one is to reach the good goals that the one that wants to reach, right? It does not mean to have a fight. It's not a struggle. This is not relationships. No, it's a cooperation between two sides to become better, to get more rewards, to benefit the Muslims more, to benefit ourselves more. And this is how things need to go. Okay, because I'm gonna keep going. Yeah. So here's part two of the lesson. The paying the mahar. So it's an obligation upon the husband to pay the mahar to his wife. Mahar might be due and might be postponed. If it is due, then whenever she asks for it, he gives it to her. If it is postponed, then when it becomes due, he has to pay it. Which means if they make the marriage contract and they mention in the contract an amount of mahar without mentioning anything about when it's paid, such mahar is due directly. So when the marriage contract is done, the mahar is due. If it is postponed to a certain time, then when the time comes, the mahar becomes due and he has to pay it. So the mahar might be an entity that has a monetary value, something that's permissible to be sold, and it might be a benefit that the people usually seek. So for example, the mahar can be 50 dinars, 20 dinars, 20 dirhams, and it could be teaching the wife like a Surah al-Mulk, for example, or teaching her how to write or teaching her how to sew. And these are sought benefits, and they can be named as mahar. The Prophet ﷺ encouraged the Muslims to make the mahar something which is easy, not to make it an obstacle. It was narrated from the Prophet ﷺ that the best among the different mahars is the easiest. So sometimes the husband has to give the wife a certain amount of money called al-mut'ah. So when certain situations happen, this takes place when the separation between the wife and the husband occurs, not because of her, right? So it's not her fault. And yeah, if she does not deserve half the mahar, and if she does not deserve half the mahar. So when she does not deserve half the mahar because of a separation, and if the separation is not because of her, then she deserves an amount called al-mut'ah. What do we mean when we say because of her? So it does not mean she talked in a bad way with her husband, so he divorced her. Because he is the one who divorced her. Because he's the one who divorced her, the divorce is, in this case, is because of him. So here's an example. After having the marriage contract and before consummating, if she apostatized, the marriage contract is breached. The marriage contract is terminated because of her. In this case, she does not deserve al-mut'ah. So when the separation is not because of her, and she does not deserve al-mut'ah, then she does. Sorry. So when the separation is not because of her, and she does not deserve half al-mahr, then she deserves al-mut'ah to reconcile her. So if someone marries a woman, they agree on a certain mahr. But before consummating, he divorces her. In this case, she deserves half the mahr. Um, so she does not deserve al-mut'ah because although the separation is not because of her, she deserves half the mahr. So she does not deserve the mut'ah. So, for example, a fire worshipper man, he married a fire worshipper woman. Later, the woman embraces Islam. The iddah passes without her embracing Islam. In this case, what happens to the marriage contract? It's breached. So now in this case, it's a breach because of him, not because of her. Because he embraced Islam, the marriage contract was breached, and she deserves the muta. So it's not only when he divorces her, it's also any separation when this separation is not caused by her. So al-muta is not something specified or well determined, but this is recommended that it would be 30 dirhams for the one who is neither rich or poor and not to reach half the mahr. So it is recommended that it would be less than half of the mahr. So even if they agree together on a little thing, but it has monetary value, this is valid. If they disagree, so he wants to give her something and she is saying no, give me more, then the judge determines the amount. He takes into consideration the husband's situation and determines based on that amount. So, as it is an obligation for the husband to support his wife, he also has to support the slave that he owns. The obligation upon him is to feed them as the slaves are usually fed in the town. This means it's not like they are fed a lot and not like when they are fed a little, but in a medium moderate way. Likewise, he needs to give the slave clothing. It's not sufficient to give the slave what is enough to cover his awrah, because this entails degrading the slave. So this is except if they live in a country where the people are used to or something like that. Now, if the owner of the slaves gives him clothes from the same kind that he wears and food from the same kind that he eats, this would be better. The Prophet ﷺ encouraged the Muslims to do that. A hadith narrated by Bukhari means those people who serve you, i.e., your slaves, they are your brothers and sisters. So if anyone owns a brother, then let him give him clothes from the same kind that he wears, food from the same kind that he eats, and does not ask him to do the type of work that he cannot bear. If he does that, then let the owner help the slave in that. So likewise, if anyone owns animals, he needs to feed them. If he locks animals and does not bring food, and does not let it go out to eat, and the animal dies, then he is sinful. The owner of the slave does not ask the slave to do something that he cannot continue doing with, which means if he is unable to do something for 1 day or 2 days, and then which means if he is able to do something for 1 day or 2 days, and then he cannot keep going on with that same pace, so he does not ask him to do such work. If he asks him to do such work, it needs to be something that he can keep doing continuously. So, for example, if he gives him to work during the day, he lets him rest during the night. Or during the summer, after Dhuhr is in, people usually take rest during that time, so he gives him rest during that time. So also likewise, if he has an animal, he cannot let the animal do something that he cannot bear in a continuous way. It's not permissible for him to hit the animal without the animal misbehaving. So an example, the donkey sometimes suddenly stops without reason. In this case, it's permissible to hit it so it keeps going. And if one hits the animal, he does not hit the face of the animal. This is haram. If someone has a donkey and the donkey stops suddenly without a reason and he wants to hit it, he does not hit the face. If he hits it on the face, he is sinful. So how about hitting a Muslim on the face? If this is the case of hitting a donkey, what would be the case of hitting a Muslim on the face? Some parents, if they want to discipline a child, they will hit the child in the face. This is haram and an enormous sin. So it's an obligation upon the wife to obey her husband in the matters that he deserves to be obeyed. That is when his right is for her to obey him. So, for example, he wants to enjoy her, then she has to obey him, except in the matters that are prohibited in the religion. For example, she's on her menses, she wants to have he wants to have sexual intercourse, then it's haram for her to allow him to do so. If she has a religious excuse, then it is not sinful on her part, if she does not obey him. So, for example, if he wants to have sexual intercourse with her and she is sick, she cannot bear it because of her sickness. In this case, she has an excuse. If he asks her to dress up for him, she has to do it, and he needs to get her the things that she needs to do that. He does not tell her to do it for me and then you pay it. Also, it's prohibited for her to fast in optional fasting if he is in town, so he's not traveling, without his permission. She needs his permission. As for the obligatory fasting, like fasting Ramadan, she fasts, whether he gives her permission or not, because Allah deserves to be obeyed whether her husband wants that or not. So it's an obligation upon her not to give permission to anyone to enter his house without his permission. So, in other terms, the people that she knows that he does not accept for her to enter the house, she does not let them in. Even if it's her father, right? If her father comes to her husband's house and she knows that her father does not accept that her father enters the house, then she does not let him in. It's not permissible for her to go outside the house without his permission. That is except for a valid excuse. So, for example, the house is going to fall on her and he tells her, I do not give you permission to go out. She goes out in this case. Or, for example, if their house is away from other people and there are people that are known to attack isolated people like her, then she can leave. But again, without an excuse, she does not leave his house without his permission. This is the case if the house is his. In the case that the house is hers, then she goes out and whenever she wants. But if he does not want her to leave the house without his permission, he needs to afford the house, to provide the house, whether by renting or buying. If she is providing the house and he tells her, do not go out, she's not sinful by not obeying him. Likewise, he prevents her from learning the obligatory knowledge that she needs. He does not teach her, he does not bring someone to teach her, and he does not give her permission to go out and learn. In this case, she goes out and learns without his permission. If he asks her to get rid of a bad smell he hates, she does that. For example, she eats garlic or onion or smokes cigarettes, and he hates the smell, they prevent him from enjoying her. When he asks her to get rid of those smells, she needs to do that. And she needs to leave out those smells that disturb him in the way that he enjoys her. So, so the husband is not entitled to prevent his wife from visiting her parents. Either he lets them enter his house to see her, or he lets her to go visit them, except for a valid excuse. Like if her parents are bad people and when they meet with her, they encourage her to do bad things. In this case, he has the right to prevent her from seeing them. What is better for the woman is to stay at home and not to go out except for something important. This is because when the woman goes out from her house, the devil concentrates on her, trying to mislead her or use her to seduce others. This does not mean that it's haram for women to go out, but like we're talking about what is better. And this sometimes is a whole different rewiring from the norm versus what the religion came with, right? The Prophet ﷺ, after he came back from the last Hajj he made, he told his wives, which means, now that you are with me in this travel, when we went to Al-Hajj, after that, stay home. And after that, no one among them, his wives, traveled or went out, even for Hajj, except Aisha. She went out with the intention of Al-Hajj because she did not understand from the Prophet, ﷺ, that it was an obligation for the wives to stay at home. So even it is better for the woman to pray Jum'ah at home than to go to the masjid to pray Jum'ah. Because it does not mean, okay, but it does not mean that it's prohibited for her to go to the masjid. Even the Prophet ﷺ told us that if a woman wants to go to the masjid to pray Jum'ah, do not prevent her. But still, for her to pray Jum'ah at home, it's better than praying Jum'ah in the masjid. So if this is is what the woman is advised to do in this case while praying Jumu'ah, then what about the case when the woman who comes and goes without any important reason? Again, it's not haram. And here's like the teacher went on a side tangent, I guess. So we're gonna go through it, inshallah. So the teacher said, let me tell you something, that there are two ways to spend one life. One can spend his or her life just losing time, just letting time pass, doing things, or to distract himself if you want. One thing here, one thing there, without concentrating, just wasting time in many cases. For example, cooking and eating, maybe 2 or 3 hours per day, 8 to 11 hours of sleep, 4 hours to watch TV, 2 hours commuting, 8 hours of work, whatever the schedule looks like. Like someone wakes up late without praying Fajr on time because the person did not sleep early to wake up to pray Subh on time. Why? Because the person was busy watching TV. He wakes up in the morning, he goes to work in a hurry, or if he is not working, he on the weekends he sleeps until 10 a.m. He wakes up, he takes his time, he takes a shower, maybe he shaves his bread, beard, sorry, slowly, and then he goes out to buy a few things from the mall. And in the meantime, he walks, he works out, right? All that stuff. This is how some people live. Now, I don't want to make a comparison, but if you lived in a village, this donkey wakes up, he eats, he runs, his owner takes him to work, and his donkey works until or before the sunset, and then gives him time to rest and eat during the day. And then he ties him up, for example, with a long rope, like some worldly things tie us. Then he gets back to a certain place and he sleeps, and then he wakes up the next day and does it over again. So some people spend their life like that. Some people uh, know that this is their only chance to acquire rewards for the hereafter. So they concentrate to go out with the most benefit that they can acquire in this life. And there's a huge difference between the two ways of life, and we should not imitate the people who do not care about the hereafter in the way that we live and act, even if it's difficult at the beginning. Not to initiate them, not to intimidate them, because what we want is what's better for us in the hereafter. So obviously, she's just saying, I'm not saying do not get a job. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that at all. You can have a job with a good intention. You can seek money, really with a good intention and to spend it to benefit you in the hereafter. In ways that other people who do not have the same amount of money cannot do. Sometimes because of a person has money, he can do things and he can get rewards and the other people cannot get. But he needs to have the intention and he needs to know what is beneficial for him in the hereafter and seek doing things. So he will arrange and he will adjust his way of life to get the most benefit that he can for the hereafter. And some of the companions told the Prophet ﷺ, our rich brothers are doing things that we cannot do. They are rich and they can donate for the sake of Allah. They get reward and we can't do that. So the Prophet ﷺ told them that there are ways to get reward other than donating money. You smile with a good intention to your Muslim brothers or sisters, you can say advice, stay close to ties, etc. So one of the companions said, at the end that so one of the companions said to the Prophet that they can also do that like us. On top of that, they can spend money and get more reward than us. The Prophet said, which means Allah gives whom He wants to whatever He wants. And Allah will reward them to have more money, so that's it. So do what you can. So I guess the biggest comparison between the two is that the intention and really seeking the hereafter, having the goal be the hereafter. Again, somebody can eat and they can get hasanat for eating versus someone who eats without a good intention and they don't get hasanat for that. So there was a big scholar, a big mufti, the hafiz of hadith. He memorized the Quran. He was mujtahid in al-fiqh. He was very detached from the dunya, and he was a brave person. So he used to participate in the war. And on top of that, he used to trade. So what was his intention? With intention of getting the profit from the trade, then distributing it, given to several pious people who are poor, here and there, scholars who do not have enough money. So he used to support them. here and there to spread the knowledge of the religion. So he didn't leave out trading, but he had a good intention in that. And he did not let trading prevent him from doing the good things. He was balanced. Um, okay. So for questions and statements, um, the teacher said, I think there was a question about, yeah, anyways. So the teacher said, many times what helps a woman to become a better wife is a good husband. If the husband does not comply with the rules of the religion, if the husband is busy with worldly matters, is drowning in doing the bad things, and he tells her, do this and do that, he's advising her with good things, but he doesn't do those things. So there's a usually huge difference in her acceptance, usually. So how she receives and how she receives what he says. So how much she receives and how she receives what he is saying, it depends on the husband being a good person, a good husband. Once a man literally told the Prophet ﷺ, my wife commits zina a lot, and whoever, wants to commit zina with her, she accepts. The Prophet ﷺ said to divorce her, but he said, I love her. The Prophet said, okay, if you don't want to divorce her, then keep her. Because sometimes one does what he can, and sometimes what is better, is divorce. So questions here are, if two spouses are married and the marriage is consummated, then the husband divorces his wife. So she deserves an mut'ah. If he didn't give her mahr before then, she deserves both mahr and a mut'ah. If a woman owes a lot of money, she has a lot of debt, and then she gets married, is the responsibility of the husband to assist her in repaying the debt? The answer is no. If the woman has a lot of debts, then she gets married. The husband does not have to assist her in paying back the debts. I'm pretty sure that's it. Okay. If you guys have any questions, something needs clarification, please let me know. Thank you for listening, and this is Lan and Nabi. التحليل لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم بارك الله فيكم السلام عليكم